I knew something was off the second I pulled into the driveway. 8 hours behind the wheel, 2 gas station pit stops, and a burger that tasted like regret. My phone had died somewhere after exit 92, and I arrived stiff, hungry, and running on fumes, but hey, it was our annual family reunion, right? Big smiles. Forced hugs, the kind of laughter that floats on the surface but doesn't touch the eyes. I walked through the front door of my childhood home and paused. Something was missing. Correction, my something was missing. Where my usual seat used to be at the family table, there was now a plush, pink dog bed. Curled into it, wearing a rhinestone sweater and the kind of smug expression that only tiny dogs and narcissists can pull off, was my sister's poodle, Lady Muffin, or Princess Gigi, or whatever her name was this month. Look who finally showed up. My sister Morgan chirped from across the room, raising a wine glass without getting up. We weren't sure you'd actually make it. I smiled. The practice kind. Nice to see you too. You know how Gigi gets if she doesn't have her spot, she added, gesturing to the table like I should be grateful the dog let me in the house. I glanced around. No spare chairs, not even a folding stool, just me, a suitcase, and a slap in the face dressed up as a toy breed. Dad didn't look up from his phone. You can eat in the den. Ah, yes. The den, the unofficial overflow zone for unimportant people and unwanted opinions. I said nothing, just nodded and set my bag down by the door. It was only one weekend, right? One weekend of pretending things were fine, of smiling through the burn. I was good at that. Always had been. I took my paper plate of food and parked myself on the couch. No one offered to scoot over. Gigi got a stocking on the mantle. I didn't. When I asked, Mom blinked like the idea of me attending had never crossed her mind. I thought you said you couldn't make it? She offered weakly, pouring another glass of wine. I confirmed, 3 times. Oh, well, it must have slipped through. Of course it did. The real slap came on the last night. My phone buzzed back to life after charging in the kitchen. A notification popped up from my bank. $1,800 transferred via Zelle to a name I didn't recognize. Memo line, reunion dinner text. I blinked. Thought maybe it was fraud. Clicked in. Nope. Definitely my account. Definitely my money. I looked up from my phone. Morgan was lounging by the fire, legs curled under her like she paid rent on the hearth. She caught my eye and raised her glass again. Dinner wasn't free, you know. Excuse me, you got that new job, don't you? She said, her tone as light as the white wine in her glass. We figured you wouldn't mind covering the food and the wine and the catering. She sipped, smiled. That's what family does, right? My jaw clenched so tight I swear I felt my molars fuse. Mom tried to smooth it over. Let's not make a thing out of this. It's been such a lovely weekend. Sure, lovely. If you ignore the part where I drove 8 hours, slept in the laundry room, and got robbed by my own blood. My thumb hovered over the report fraud button. I could already hear the guilt trip forming in my mother's voice. Don't cause a scene, it's just money. No, it wasn't just money, it was the last of what I'd saved. The emergency cushion I'd built while scraping by. It was all I had left after helping this family more times than I could count. And they didn't ask. They just took. I stood up, quietly, controlled. Morgan, I said. Calm. She looked up, smile flickering. Who gave you access to my account? She actually laughed. You Venmo'd me once for Dad's birthday dinner. You never unlinked the card. Chill. It's not like you're broke. No, not broke. Just broke enough to still be useful. And that's when it hit me. Every chore I'd done, every payment I'd made, every time I'd said yes when I should have screamed, no, they weren't asking, they were assuming. Because to them, I wasn't family, I was a resource. And the scariest part, I let it happen. I grabbed my coat. I need some air, I muttered. But as I turned toward the door, something stopped me. Morgan was on her phone again, snickering. She turned the screen toward my cousin Nate. Check this out. Daniel got rejected again. 3rd time this year. I mean, maybe if he smiled more. They laughed. Dad chuckled. Morgan looked at me, eyes twinkling. Oops, was that off limits? And that was it. The moment. The click. The clarity. I wasn't just the family ATM, I was the punchline. I stepped back into the room, cleared my throat. Everyone turned. Let me tell a joke, I said, voice even. A guy drives 8 hours to see his family. He's the only one who doesn't fly. Brings gifts, pays for dinner, sleeps on the laundry room floor. The room got quiet. But when he gets there, his seat's been given to a dog. Then they steal $1,800 from his account without asking. And then I look straight at Morgan. The punchline calls him a loser. Silence. No one laughed. Not even Gigi. Nobody said a word. You could hear the hum of the fridge in the next room. Even the wine glasses seemed to hold their breath. My mother, ever the keeper of appearances, gave a nervous laugh and muttered something about not ruining the weekend. I ignored her. My focus was locked on Morgan. She rolled her eyes, leaned back on the couch, and crossed her arms like I'd just told her the weather forecast. Not that she'd committed digital theft. "It's not that deep," she said, as if those words were a reset button. But it was deep. Deeper than any of them wanted to admit. Because this wasn't about one dinner. It was years of little betrayals that added up like interest on a loan. No one asked me to take out, but everyone expected me to repay. I looked around the room, scanning the faces of people who all seemed so damn comfortable. Morgan's husband scrolled his phone like we were background noise. My dad suddenly found the fireplace fascinating. My mom kept fiddling with her necklace. I could have dropped a bomb in that room, and they still would have acted like I was overreacting. I'd always been too sensitive or dramatic or difficult a neat little label they slapped on me every time I dared to say I was tired of being treated like less. It wasn't the dog bed. It wasn't the missing stocking. It wasn't even the money. It was the casualness of it all. Like I should have expected it. Like it was just another part of the family routine. Me giving, them taking, no questions asked, no gratitude given. "I'm not poor," I said, calm and measured. "But I'm also not your personal debit card." Morgan opened her mouth, probably to say something snide, but I raised a hand. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." My mom stepped in, her voice soft and sweet, like a store-bought apology. "We didn't mean anything by it. It was just a misunderstanding." I turned to her, and for the first time in years, I didn't swallow my truth. "You chose a dog's comfort over mine," I said. "You didn't forget to hang my stocking. You didn't forget to save me a seat. You just didn't care enough to make sure I was included." Her face flickered, a tiny crack in her practiced composure. And it was in that moment I realized something that hit harder than the missing money or the stolen seat. These people didn't just forget me. They erased me, on purpose, and expected me to thank them for it. Morgan scoffed. "You're acting like we burned your house down." "No," I said, stepping toward the center of the room. "You didn't burn my house down. You just kept stealing bricks from it until I had to sleep on the floor." I could feel the weight of every silent moment I'd buried for years pushing up to the surface. My breath was steady. My voice didn't shake. "Let me tell you what you've taken, since we're being honest," I said. "You took 2 months of rent when your first husband bailed. You took vet bills for a dog with a gluten allergy. You took every birthday dinner, every last-minute emergency, every 'can you spot me?' and every 'I swear I'll pay you back.'" I turned to my dad. "You took a new dishwasher, a smart TV, and last winter's gas bill. And when my car broke down and I asked for help, you told me to plan better." I scanned their faces, daring someone to deny it. Morgan laughed again, dry and humorless. "That's what family does. We help each other." I didn't flinch. "No, that's what I do. You all just help yourselves." My dad stood up now, finally tired of pretending to be distracted. "Let's not turn this into some dramatic performance," he muttered. "You always were a bit theatrical." I smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "You know what's theatrical? Transferring $1,800 without permission and calling it a group decision." That made him sit back down. "You all made choices," I continued, "and now I'm making mine." I pulled out my phone. "You have 1 hour to send the money back. If it's not in my account by the time I cross the state line, I'm reporting it as fraud, and the bank can deal with you directly." Morgan's expression shifted from smug to alarmed. "You wouldn't actually do that. Already flagged it," I said. "This is just a courtesy." She stood now too, furious in that unearned, performative way she'd mastered. "You're insane," she hissed. "What are you going to do? Run away?" I tilted my head. "No, I'm going to escape." And that was the truth. I wasn't storming out in rage. I was walking away in clarity. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, but because something inside me had cracked open. I laid there on the scratchy cot in the laundry room, the hum of the dryer my only lullaby, And I thought about every time I let them steamroll me, every time I let them laugh off my hurt, every time I smiled and said, "It's okay," when it wasn't. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. I packed slowly, deliberately, taking care not to leave a single charger behind. I wasn't just taking my things. I was taking my peace, my future, my self-respect. When I walked into the kitchen, Morgan was there with her oat milk latte, looking like nothing had happened. "You're really being dramatic," she said without even turning around. "It was a group call. Dad said it was fine. Did you?" I asked, looking directly at him. He was at the table, peeling a banana like it was a debate prop. "I didn't say that exactly," he mumbled. "We just figured. Figured I'd pay, like always?" I snapped. "Figured I'd play the good soldier while you all threw parties on my dime?" They started talking over each other then, excuses tumbling out in tangled strings. My mom said it wasn't about the money. My dad said I'd misunderstood. Morgan claimed I was twisting things. But I wasn't listening, not anymore. I was too busy lining up every moment in my head like a row of dominoes. Every time I'd let them guilt me. Every time I'd stayed silent just to keep the peace. Every time I swallowed the urge to scream, because screaming would have made me the problem, not the person dealing with one. "I checked my statements last night," I said. "Do you want to know how much I've spent on this family in the past 2 years?" They all fell quiet. $23,411. My mom gasped. Morgan turned pale. "You're exaggerating," she said, but her voice lacked the bite it usually had. "I printed the records," I replied. "Vet bills, rent, Postmates, credit cards. Remember the time you bought a new iPad and told me you accidentally overcharged your limit? That was me. I paid for that." Morgan went quiet. My dad stood up again, looking smaller now. "Okay," he said. "Maybe things got a little out of hand." "No," I corrected. "They got exactly as out of hand as you let them. And I let them too. But that's done now." Morgan's husband stepped forward then, holding his coffee like it could shield him. "Maybe we all just need to calm down." "No," I said, my voice like steel. "I've been calm. I've been patient. I've been silent. And all it got me was debt and a dog bed." That one hit. A cousin in the back snorted into her mimosa. I turned to my parents. "You always made excuses for her. She was passionate. I was difficult. She was sensitive. I was selfish. But you know what? I'm done playing that role." My mom reached out, her face a mix of fear and guilt. "But we're still family." "No," I said, stepping away from her touch. "Family doesn't take without asking. Family doesn't mock you behind your back. Family doesn't treat you like furniture, convenient when needed, ignored when not." Morgan muttered something under her breath, but I didn't care anymore. I turned to all of them. "From now on, I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your emotional mule. I'm not your fixer or your wallet or your afterthought." I picked up my bag and slung it over my shoulder. "You can call me selfish. You can say I'm overreacting. You can rewrite this story however you need to feel better. But I know what happened. I know who I am. And I'm not the villain in this narrative. I'm just the one who finally walked away." Then I opened the door, stepped outside, and didn't look back. The cold air hit me like a reset button. I didn't cry. I didn't fume. I just stood there on the front lawn, letting the silence wrap around me. It was a strange kind of quiet, the kind you only get after you stop trying to be understood. The kind that creeps in when you finally stop rehearsing the conversations you'll never win. My breath came out in small clouds, and I could still hear muffled voices through the windows behind me, probably scrambling to rewrite the story before it left the driveway. I wasn't surprised. That house ran on selective memory and retouched versions of the truth. They weren't interested in accountability. They just didn't want to look bad. And right now, I was the threat. Not because I yelled, but because I didn't. I should have kept walking. Should have gotten in the car and left that chapter behind. But something tugged at me, something louder than all the years of silence. They needed a message they couldn't misinterpret, a truth they couldn't smother with guilt or brush off as a moment. I turned around, walked back up the porch steps, and opened the front door without knocking. They froze mid-conversation like kids caught breaking something expensive. Morgan narrowed her eyes. "Forget something?" I nodded. "Yeah, I forgot to give you all a gift." I walked to the center of the living room and dropped my duffel bag with a solid thud. Slowly, I unzipped it and pulled out a thick black folder, the kind that usually lives on lawyers' desks. My mom looked visibly nervous. My dad leaned forward. Morgan muttered something under her breath, probably assuming I'd printed out another dramatic speech. She wasn't completely wrong. This, I said, laying the folder flat on the coffee table, is proof. Of everything. I pulled out documents one by one like dealing a deck of receipts. Bank statements, screenshots of transactions, emails, text threads, vet invoices, rent receipts, grocery app logs, Uber receipts. I had labeled every page color-coded, categorized, time-stamped. Morgan's name showed up most, but my parents weren't far behind. My dad's eyes scanned one of the sheets, and I could see the exact moment recognition hit him. "This is over the top," he mumbled, trying to recover some kind of authority. "Why go to all this trouble?" I looked him square in the eye. "Because for once, I want the truth to be louder than your excuses." Then I pulled out the last piece, a flash drive in a small plastic case. I placed it on top of the stack. This is a backup of everything, in case anyone forgets again, or if the IRS wants to ask where Morgan's extra income came from. Her face drained. "You wouldn't." I didn't flinch. Already did. Just covering all my bases. My mom gasped softly. "We're family," she whispered, like the words still held value after all this. "You're right," I said, voice steady. "So tell me, when was the last time you did something for me that didn't involve guilt, gaslighting, or assuming I'd just say yes?" No one answered. Morgan's husband reached for his coffee again, like maybe caffeine could drown out the tension. I turned back to the table and pulled out a final item. A photo frame, the cheap plastic kind from a pharmacy. Inside was a picture from last year's reunion, me standing at the edge of the group, holding a tray of drinks, partially cut off in the crop. Taped to the back was a check for $1, made out to Morgan. In the memo line I had written, "For all the thanks I ever got." I placed it gently on the table. "You wanted something? Take it." Morgan didn't speak. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were shiny but dry. My mom looked like she might say something, but the words never formed. Maybe for the first time, she realized she had nothing left to defend. Because this wasn't a fight. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't storming. I was documenting. And that was worse. That was what made it real. I gave them one last look. Not angry, not even disappointed. Just done. "You won't hear from me again," I said, picking up my now empty duffel. "No birthday calls. No last-minute transfers. No more playing the good child while you hand the crown to the loudest one in the room." My dad stood up, fumbling with some attempt at authority. "Where are you even going?" I smiled. Small but honest. Somewhere I'm actually invited. That night, I didn't sleep in a laundry room. I didn't fold myself into a corner of a life that never fit me. I drove to my aunt's house, Sylvia, my mom's older sister, the one who stopped coming to holidays years ago. She opened the door in sweatpants and socks with holes in the toes, holding a plate of pasta and a glass of boxed wine. "Heard what happened," she said, not even needing a hello. "Told you they'd try to drain you dry. You hungry?" That was it. No lectures, no passive-aggressive comments, no twisting the knife while pretending to patch it. Just a plate of food, a beat-up couch, and a cat named Marvin who jumped into my lap like we'd known each other in a past life. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some Instagram story of found family glow-ups. But it was real. I slept like I hadn't in years. No tension, no buzzing phone, no mental script of what I should have said. The next morning, I woke up with something I hadn't felt in a long time: stillness. Not the kind that comes from exhaustion or resignation. The kind that comes after you stop bleeding for people who treat your bandages like napkins. I opened my laptop and got to work. Canceled every subscription. Pulled my name off every shared account. Unlinked every card. My parents' phone plan? Gone. Morgan's pet cam cloud storage? Gone. The Amazon Prime account my whole family had been using since I created it 6 years ago? Deleted. I wasn't even angry. I just felt clean. Like I was brushing off years of emotional plaque. Like I'd finally taken back my name. They called, of course. First Mom, then Dad, then Morgan, who tried FaceTiming me twice in 1 hour. I let every call go to voicemail. She left one message, long, breathless, and dramatic. "You've broken this family," she sobbed. "I hope you're proud of what you've done to Mom. She's heartbroken." I listened to the whole thing, then deleted it, because I wasn't the one who broke anything. I just stopped holding the cracks together. Later that week, I got a message from my cousin Nate, the same one who laughed when Morgan made that joke about Daniel. Yo, that was savage. They're all spiraling. Dad says you went nuclear. I responded with one word, good. The bank confirmed the fraud claim had gone through. Money refunded. Her access cut. Her name flagged for unauthorized activity. I saved the paperwork, labeled the folder never again, and backed it up to 3 drives. A month passed. No calls, no texts, no birthdays, no guilt trips. Just silence. Sweet, earned, overdue silence. I wasn't lonely. I wasn't regretful. I started cooking for myself. Real meals, not just frozen stuff between conference calls and last-minute favors. I reconnected with people I'd ghosted out of emotional burnout. I said yes to things I actually wanted to do and no to anything that felt like a performance. I started dating again. Turns out when you stop living for other people, there's actually space to figure out who you are. Then one afternoon, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a while. Kelly. Morgan's sister-in-law. Quiet, always polite, never got in the middle of things. Hey, the message said, just wanted you to know. I left Jacob. You were right. He's a lot. And I'm done cleaning up his messes too. Also, thank you for everything you ever did for the kids. They'll never know. But I do. I stared at the screen for a long time. 2 simple messages, but they hit harder than any of the grand apologies I never got. It reminded me that sometimes, even if your voice echoes in the wrong rooms, someone somewhere hears you. That weekend, I went to a friend's Friendsgiving. Nothing fancy. Just mismatched chairs, too much wine, and people who didn't care what I did for a living or whether I brought the right side dish. Someone asked about my family. I told the story. The whole thing. The dog bed. The stolen money. The invoice folder. The $1 check. They listened without interrupting, and when I finished, someone said, "Damn, you're the main character." I laughed so hard I almost cried. Because for the first time in my life, I actually felt like it. After that Friendsgiving night, something in me clicked for good. It wasn't some cinematic revelation, no dramatic music, no perfect metaphor, just a deep, quiet certainty that I wasn't going back. Not emotionally, not financially, not even out of politeness. It had taken me years to realize that love with conditions is not love, it's leverage. And I was done being leveraged. So I kept walking forward, even when the silence from my family grew louder than any fight we'd ever had. There were no half-hearted apologies, no maybe we overstepped messages, not even a guilt-ridden Christmas card. At first I thought it would hurt. I braced myself for the sting, but what I felt instead was relief, like I had been holding my breath for a decade and finally exhaled. Without their voices in my ear, my own thoughts grew clearer. I started hearing myself again, the version of me before guilt became my personality. I went back through my own records, not the financial kind this time, but emotional ones. Memories I had filed away and labeled harmless, but that never really were. Like the birthday party where they forgot to bring a cake because Morgan's flight got delayed. Or the time I got a promotion, and my dad's only response was, "Good, maybe you can help your sister now." Even back in high school, when I landed a scholarship, and my mom called it lucky because Morgan had tried harder but didn't get it. It was always the same script. Morgan was the golden one, I was the responsible one. She got attention, I got assignments. And somewhere along the way, I accepted that as normal, but not anymore. I made a quiet promise to myself, no more rewriting history to make other people comfortable. If they couldn't handle the truth, they could stay in their version of it. I wasn't editing myself anymore. That mindset shift bled into everything. I started being more honest with friends, saying no without guilt, saying yes without over-explaining. I went to therapy not because I was falling apart, but because I wanted to stay intact. My therapist asked me once, "What do you owe people who only love you when you're useful?" I didn't have an answer at the time, but I do now. Nothing. You owe them nothing. Not your peace, not your money, not your weekends, not your silence. Especially not your silence. 3 months after I walked out, I got an email from my mother. The subject line was, "Please read." It was long, rambling, punctuated with phrases like, "We just didn't know how you felt," and "You should have said something sooner," and the classic, "Family is complicated." There was no apology, just soft-shoed excuses and emotional bribes. At the end, she wrote, Your father is very hurt. He doesn't know why you've done this." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood that clarity isn't cruelty. People confuse the two when they benefit from your confusion. I didn't need them to understand me. I needed to understand myself. And I did. For the first time in years, I felt solid. Morgan didn't write, not directly, but she posted. Oh, did she post? Cryptic quotes about betrayal, photos of Gigi in a tutu with captions like "only one in this family," with loyalty. Passive-aggressive jabs about people who think they're better than family just because they have money now. I didn't comment. I didn't even screenshot. I just rolled my eyes and kept scrolling. Because that was the difference now. I wasn't playing the game anymore. I wasn't showing up to defend myself in a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. Let them talk. Let them twist it. I knew the truth, and more importantly, I had proof. And not just in folders or bank logs, but in the way my life started to heal once they were no longer pulling at the threads. By spring, I had moved into a new apartment. Nothing fancy, just mine. The lease had my name and no one else's. The fridge stayed stocked because I put food in it. The lights stayed on because I paid the bill. No more late-night Venmo requests. No more overdraft surprises. No more "can you spot me just this once?" that somehow turned into 10 times. My couch had a throw blanket. My bookshelf wasn't full, but it was quiet. And the silence? It didn't ache anymore. It comforted. It reminded me that I could breathe without bracing for the next obligation disguised as affection. And then, out of nowhere, I got an invitation. A real one. From a friend I hadn't seen since college. She was throwing a housewarming party, and she wanted me there. "Bring whoever you want," she said. I almost laughed. Because for the first time, I didn't feel the need to ask permission. I went. Showed up with wine and a dish I actually had time to cook. And I didn't talk about my family. Not because I was hiding anything, but because I didn't feel defined by them anymore. When someone asked about my holidays, I just said, "I did my own thing this year," and left it at that. No explanations, no asterisks, just peace. That night, I came home and sat on the balcony, feet tucked under me, a cup of tea in my hand. I watched the city move around me, cars, lights, people living their lives, and felt this strange warmth in my chest. Not excitement, not joy, something slower, something quieter, satisfaction. I had no one to impress, no performances to maintain, no family dinners where I had to shrink myself so someone else could shine. I was no longer living on the edge of someone else's spotlight. I had found my own light, and it wasn't blinding or loud, it was just steady. Then came a text from Daniel, my cousin. The quiet one. The one Morgan had mocked the night I left. Just wanted to say, "I heard what happened. I'm sorry." I laughed because I didn't know what else to do, but I shouldn't have. That wasn't right. "Hope you're doing okay." I stared at it for a moment. I hadn't expected it. Honestly, I thought he'd picked a side and stayed there. But something about the timing, the simplicity of it, made me realize that maybe people do notice. Maybe not at first. Maybe not when it matters most. But eventually, the truth trickles in. I replied simply, "Thank you, I am." That was all. I didn't need to rehash the past. I didn't need to dissect his apology. I just acknowledged it and moved on. Weeks turned into months, and with every season, I felt lighter. I got promoted at work. Started planning a solo trip, my first real vacation in years. I rewatched my favorite shows without anyone making comments about how single people have too much time. I bought fresh flowers every Sunday and learned how to cook meals I used to think were too complicated. Life wasn't flashy, it wasn't filtered, but it was mine. And it was finally enough. I didn't block my family, I didn't change my number, but I didn't reach out either. I let the silence stretch, let the gap grow. I think some part of them expected me to come back eventually, to fold again, to show up with groceries and apologies and pretend it never happened. But I didn't, because here's the truth. No one tells you, sometimes the best revenge isn't a dramatic exit or a fiery speech. It's the absence, the silence, the undeniable peace that follows when you remove the people who only showed up to take. And that silence, it wasn't empty. It was full of self-respect, full of boundaries, full of everything they had tried to strip from me. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't angry, I was free. And freedom, as it turns out, tastes a lot like homemade pasta and Sunday morning light and not having to check your bank app in fear. It tastes like peace. And for the first time, I was full. I used to think healing was loud. Like one day I'd wake up and everything would feel better and I'd make a list and cross things off and suddenly be over it all. But that's not how it happened. It was quieter than I expected. It looked like doing my laundry on time. Like remembering I liked music without lyrics while working. Like walking past the dog aisle at the store without thinking about gluten-free biscuits or fancy strollers. It was realizing that my entire identity had been wrapped around other people's needs for so long, I forgot what I liked for myself. And when I started doing things just for me, without announcing them or asking for anyone's opinion, that's when I knew I was actually getting somewhere. One morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me said answer. It was Kelly again, Morgan's now ex-sister-in-law. Her voice was steadier this time, stronger. She told me she'd moved out, gotten her own place, filed the paperwork. She didn't need advice, she didn't want money, she just wanted to say thank you. You were the first person who made me feel like I wasn't crazy, she said. Like maybe it wasn't me, maybe it really was them. I leaned against the kitchen counter, heart tight in my chest. Not because I was sad, but because I understood too well what it felt like to think you're the problem when you're just the only one not pretending. We talked for an hour, swapped stories that echoed in all the familiar ways, being talked over, being guilted into gratitude, being told that's just how she is when someone hurt you and no one wanted to deal with it. Kelly wasn't bitter. She was rebuilding. She sounded tired but free. And it reminded me that walking away isn't weakness. It's strength in its purest form, the kind that doesn't need to scream to be heard, the kind that doesn't wait for applause, the kind you only understand once you've stopped watering dead gardens and started planting something of your own. That night, I sat down and started writing a letter. Not to send, not to post, just for me, a letter to the version of me who stayed quiet, who didn't speak up at that dinner table, who smiled when her stocking was missing, who slept on a cot and told herself it was fine. I told her she didn't deserve that. That love shouldn't feel like a transaction. That being the responsible one doesn't mean being the disposable one. I told her I was sorry for not protecting her sooner, and I promised her I wouldn't let it happen again. Then I folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer, not to forget, but to remember what it cost to find my voice. The next weekend, I was at the grocery store when I saw Morgan's ex-husband now, at the self-checkout. He looked thinner, stressed, like life had stopped going according to plan. He didn't see me, or maybe he did and just pretended not to. I didn't say anything, I didn't wave, I didn't gloat. I just watched him fumble with a barcode that wouldn't scan and thought, how strange it is when people who used to act like they own the world can't even manage a bag of groceries. I paid for my things and walked out into the sun, and for once, the past didn't trail behind me like a shadow. By early summer, I had started journaling again. Not about them, about me. About the books I read, the dreams I forgot I had, the way my plants leaned toward the light. I started planning a solo trip, something I'd always wanted to do but never gave myself permission for. I didn't need to ask anyone's opinion. I didn't need to justify the expense. I just needed to want it, and I did. For the first time, my goals weren't tied to proving anything. They weren't revenge in disguise, they were just mine. I kept getting the occasional updates through mutual friends or vague posts. Morgan was still spinning her narrative. My mom apparently told people I'd had a breakdown and was figuring things out on my own. My dad had kept quiet, like he always did, which in that house counted as loyalty. I could have corrected them. I could have gone public, but I didn't. Because some stories don't need to be rewritten, they need to be left behind. I wasn't interested in winning, I was interested in peace. And you don't get peace by dragging your pain into every conversation. You get it by knowing the truth and letting it be enough. Then one day, while checking my email, I saw something strange. A legal notice forwarded from my bank. It was a formality. Morgan had attempted to reverse the fraud claim and was denied. The system flagged her account for suspicious activity. There was a line in the attached report that said, "Pattern of behavior indicative of financial manipulation." I stared at the sentence for a long time, not because it surprised me, but because for years, I had convinced myself I was imagining things. That maybe I was overreacting, but here it was, black and white, not just a feeling, not just a gut instinct, proof. And while I didn't feel joy, I did feel validation. The kind that doesn't need to be shouted, the kind that lets you sleep. I forwarded the file to my personal drive, labeled it closure, and moved on with my day. No angry texts, no triumph posts, just one more string untied from a tangled mess I no longer had to carry. Sometimes justice doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it comes quietly, in folders and timestamps and overdue consequences. And that's enough. Months pass like that. Simple. Steady. I started dating someone new. Slow, kind, patient. The first man I'd ever met who didn't make me feel like love had to be earned through sacrifice. He didn't ask me to fix anything for him. He didn't treat my independence like a threat. We went on hikes, cooked dinner together, sat in silence without it being awkward. I didn't tell him everything right away, but eventually I did. Not the whole saga, just the parts that mattered. He listened, really listened. And when I finished, he didn't say, "That's crazy," or "Family is still family." He said, "You did what you had to do." That was all. And it was perfect. One night while we were cooking, he asked if I wanted to visit his family for the holidays. I paused. Not because I didn't want to go, but because for the first time, the idea of being around someone else's family didn't make my stomach twist. I smiled and said yes, because maybe the past had taken enough. Maybe it was time to start saying yes to the present. As the end of the year crept closer, I realized something I never thought I'd feel. I wasn't scared of running into them. Not at the grocery store, not at weddings, not online. I didn't need them to hurt. I didn't need them to collapse. I just needed space. And I had it, and that was enough. I still got updates from time to time. Someone saw Morgan at a work event. Someone else ran into my mom at a market. Apparently, she still tells people she doesn't understand what happened, that I just snapped. And maybe in her version that's true, but in mine, I didn't snap. I woke up. And when you finally wake up after years of surviving in someone else's dream, you don't go back to sleep. You start living for real. The strange thing about walking away from people who raised you is that the world doesn't stop. There's no grand parade or closing credits. The sun still rises, dishes still need washing, emails still come in, but inside something shifts. It's subtle at first, like a bone you didn't know was out of place, suddenly clicking back into alignment. One day you catch yourself laughing, really laughing, not because you're trying to keep things light, not because you're deflecting, but because something is actually funny. You blink and realize hours passed without thinking about who might be disappointed in you. You don't rehearse conversations in your head anymore because you're not trying to be heard by people who've already decided not to listen. Life becomes less about explaining and more about experiencing, less about proving and more about being. A year after I left, I got an envelope in the mail, no return address. I recognized my mother's handwriting before I even opened it. Inside was a birthday card. No message. Just love, Mom and Dad written in ink that looked careful. Like each letter had been shaped to feel more sincere than it was. No acknowledgement of what had happened. No apology. Just a card, like a reminder that they were still there, still watching, still pretending this was just a phase I'd grow out of. I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I didn't even toss it out right away. I just stood at the counter, card in hand, and realized how light I felt. This wasn't bait anymore. It wasn't a hook. It was a whisper from the past, and I had the option to ignore it. So I did. I slid it into the recycling bin between junk coupons and expired grocery ads, then went back to stirring my soup. People think cutting ties means hatred, that you must be burning with rage to walk away. But the truth is, the most permanent exits happen in stillness. No smoke, no fire, just a door that quietly closes and never reopens. I didn't need them to say sorry anymore. I didn't need them to see what they did wrong. Healing isn't waiting for someone else to admit they hurt you. It's realizing their validation was never the medicine you needed in the first place. You heal when you stop checking the door to see if they're coming back. You heal when you stop making room for their return. That fall, I went on my solo trip. A cabin in the mountains. No signal, no deadlines, just air and trees, and the sound of my own breath slowing down. I hiked without checking the time. I cooked meals with music playing low in the background. I journaled. I didn't once think about Morgan's opinion or whether my mother would say I was being wasteful. For the first time, I didn't pack guilt. I brought peace. and it fit better than anything else I owned. One morning I stood on the deck with coffee in my hands, wrapped in a blanket that smelled like cedar, and realized how rare it had become for my mind to spiral. The noise was gone. The constant pull to fix, to explain, to justify gone. I was no longer haunted by what I should have said or what they might think of me. I wasn't anyone's emotional mule anymore. I was just a person, standing in the quiet, feeling whole. Back in the city, life kept blooming. I got a message from Daniel again, short and simple. You look good, happier, keep going. I sent back a smile emoji and a thank you, and that was it. I didn't need him to prove anything. The acknowledgement was enough. Quiet solidarity. A kind of distant nod that said, I see you now. And maybe that's all I ever really wanted, not praise, not pity, just to be seen without being used. Kelly and I kept in touch too. She got a job at a nonprofit, moved into a small place with big windows, sent me pictures of the kids playing with her rescue dog. She joked once that we should start a support group for emotionally overdrawn family members. We laughed, but honestly, I think it's not a bad idea. Sometimes I get asked if I regret it, if I miss them, if I'd go back. The answer isn't simple. I miss the idea of family. The dream version, the one where love doesn't come with conditions, where your seat at the table isn't negotiable. I miss what I hoped they could be, not what they actually were. But regret? No, I don't regret protecting myself. I don't regret setting boundaries so strong that even guilt couldn't climb over them. I don't regret refusing to carry a weight that was never mine to begin with. Because what I gained was worth every step I took away from that house. I gained myself. Not the version of me that knew how to make everyone else comfortable, but the one who finally learned how to live. Last Christmas, the first made lasagna and invited 2 friends over. No big production. Just music, warm socks, laughter that didn't have a trace of tension behind it. We played cards. We talked about the worst gifts we'd ever received. I shared the story about the time Morgan gave me a used makeup palette and said, "It's barely touched, and you don't really wear much anyway." They laughed hard, and I laughed too. Not bitterly, just cleanly, the way people do when the memory no longer owns them. After dessert, we sat on the couch, passing around a bowl of peppermint popcorn, and one of them said, "You know, I always thought family had to be blood. But maybe it's just whoever makes you feel safe enough to be weird in pajamas." I smiled. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Later that night, I scrolled through old photos on my phone. I passed the one from last year's reunion, the one where I was cut off at the edge, holding a tray of drinks, forgotten in plain sight. I paused on it. My thumb hovered over the delete button, and then I moved it into a folder labeled Before, not to erase it, but to remind myself of everything I've grown past. I don't need to delete the past to reclaim the future. I just need to stop giving it the power to define me. Some stories end with reconciliation, some end with dramatic comebacks. Mine ended with a quiet kind of truth. The kind that doesn't need witnesses, the kind that lives in late-night peace and soft mornings, and the gentle knowledge that you finally chose yourself. There's no applause, no standing ovation, just a steady heartbeat, and the knowledge that you're not carrying anyone else's story on your shoulders anymore. So if you're reading this and wondering if it's too late to walk away, let me say this, it's not. If you're worried they'll call you ungrateful, selfish, dramatic, they will. Let them. Because you're not here to be palatable. You're not here to earn a place in someone else's narrative. You're here to live your own. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is close the door they never thought you'd have the strength to walk through. I did. And I never looked back, because peace is better than permission. And healing isn't loud. It's steady. It's honest. It's mine. Story 2. Because my wife's appearance was below par, my sister forbade her from attending her wedding. As they stood for the ideal family portrait, I remained silent, sent a present, and arranged for a private helicopter flight. Every guest froze in disbelief as my helicopter dropped something while flying overhead. "You are still welcome to attend." Claire sipped her green juice and crossed her legs, as if she hadn't just slapped my wife in the face. She can't, though. Cohesion, elegance, and visual narrative are key components of this wedding. I'm not attempting to be cruel. I'm just telling the truth. With her hands firmly gripped in her lap, my wife sat next to me. The sheer constraint of not expressing what she wanted to made her cheeks flush, not because she was ashamed, That look seemed familiar to me. I glanced at my sister Claire, the perfectionist, the influencer, the girl who believed she was curating a Vogue spread rather than getting married. My wife is being banged by you. My voice was flat as I spoke. Claire, looking quite innocent, cocked her head. No, the visitor list is being edited by me. And that's it. She disregarded us both like background noise as she glanced down at her phone and resumed browsing Pinterest boards. My wife was the first to get up. Leave, she muttered. Her back was straight, but her voice broke slightly. Neither of us made a declaration or another word, not to my mom, who had remained silent the entire time while seated in the corner. Not to my dad, who didn't realize we were going since he was too preoccupied with the guest seating arrangement. As we arrived at the vehicle, for her, I opened the door. Don't create a scene, okay? She replied, pausing to gaze at me. This is nothing new to me. Something inside of me was broken by it. I refrained from arguing. That evening, I just gave her a forehead kiss and took her home. I said no in my RSVP. I sent a present, a costly one. No drama, no petty remarks. I then called to secure a private helicopter trip above the vineyard wedding location and to confirm the precise time for the post-ceremony photographs, prepared a modest, lawful, and memorable speech due to my sister. Want a picture-perfect day free of those who aren't visually appealing. Okay then. But the instant the skies opened will always be in her memory. Something flew down like ash as the aircraft hovered. Something that sent all of the guests running, shouting, clutching their high-end heels and phones. Nobody anticipated it, not even her. But you have to know how we got here before I tell you what I dropped. For this was more than a wedding. This was about years of being the family's spare brutality and control. This story about a brother who had had enough. My wife wasn't just banned. After everything I had done, they deleted her. I invested a lot of money in this family. I was a walking wallet, disposable, and now a bother. What hurts the most, do you know? It isn't the taunts, or even the quiet. When a family treats you like furniture, you're doing everything for them. Helpful when required. When not growing up, invisible. The princess was Claire, the captain of the debating club, with hair as smooth as a pageant. As soon as she was able to spell the word designer, she was a queen bee. She played helpless and smiled sweetly to get what she wanted. However, I was the one who solved the problem, the one who quietly brought about the change. For example, I paid my dad's power bill when he neglected to do so for 2 months. A week before prom, Claire's car broke down, so I used my whole credit limit to fix it so she wouldn't miss her special day. I convinced myself that's what family did, even if no one ever expressed gratitude. Guess who co-signed the lease for Claire's first apartment after college? I was the one who couldn't take the strain after being laid off for 3 months. You know who paid for her groceries, rent, and gym membership? Me, once again. Our parents didn't have the funds to throw her a royal-style surprise birthday celebration. Can you guess who spent $2,400 in decorations and catering? You understand, Claire wasn't the only one. To remind me that I was the one with his life together, which somehow made me responsible for everyone else's lives going apart. Our parents used to nickname me Mr. Responsible, which actually meant Mr. ATM. My wife, Emily, was aware of it right away. Why do you pay every time? Once, when I paid my mom $600 to pay a few expenses, she inquired. I told them they were relatives. She gave me a prolonged gaze. We are too. I regret not listening to her earlier. The wedding preparations was the tipping moment. Anthony was a tech guy with a startup and a big ego, and Claire had recently been engaged to him. Their extravagant yet rustic vineyard wedding seems to have cost more than my entire college tuition. I was silent at first. I was familiar with these situations. Then I got a call from my mother. She said, "We're just a little short." How brief. She let out a loud sigh. Claire's ideal location increased the cost. If only you could lend a hand once. What is the amount? She replied. A few thousand, as if it were little. You always lend a hand and earn a solid living, you know. Although I didn't say yes, I also didn't say no. I made that error. Because Claire texted me the next day. I appreciate you willing to help. The wine tasting package will be fantastic. Hold on. Do you agree? I gave her a call. Who informed you? I consented to pay. She chuckled. Oh, please, don't be frugal. Your only sister is getting married. Don't pretend that you can't afford it either. You recently bought a new automobile, didn't you? My chest constricted. Yes, I needed a new automobile since my old one was dying. She gave an eye roll. Over the phone, I could hear it. You're such a buzzkill, God. I informed her that I had not committed to any payment. She hung up on me after saying, okay, I'll ask Dad. My aunt informed me that Claire had reorganized the budget 3 days later, assuming that everyone, including Emily, who hadn't even received an invitation to the wedding, knew that I would pay $5,000. My folks were conveniently evasive when I challenged them. You've always been helpful, though. As if it were a contract, my dad remarked. Mom added, don't give her a bad experience. She is worthy of a wonderful day. Perhaps Emily should stay at home if she is incapable of working as a team. I gazed at them. Are you serious? They exchanged glances and shrugged. You are aware of Claire's personality. As if that excused everything, my mother responded. She was anxious. My father also added, weddings evoke strong feelings. When I got home, Emily was on the couch. She was holding a glass of wine. She had crimson eyes. She sent me an SMS. She said. I took a seat next to her. Claire. I gave a nod. She said that I was a visual burden and didn't belong. Because if you truly cared about your family, you would come by yourself. My throat became parched. I make you look small, she remarked. Emily looked across at me. She trembled when she spoke. Do I make you appear diminutive? Something inside of me exploded at that moment. No, I said. They do. I texted Claire the next morning. No passion, no drama. We will not be going. I hope it fulfills all of your dreams. I sent the present too. She anticipated her registry to include an expensive espresso machine. I then made the helicopter reservation. However, the guilt storm arrived before I could feel good about it. Mom called. Dad gave a call. I received a message from Claire in the group chat. I didn't think you would be that petty. You have always been giving. Money, I suppose, transforms people. The final string was broken by the text that followed. Your wife doesn't measure up, so don't penalize me for it. I took a good look at the statement. Emily had not simply been wiped by Claire. She spat on her. They also expected me to stop funding it. I grabbed my phone, dialed a private aviation firm, and began organizing the event that would spoil her ideal day. Not with force, just the facts. In front of everyone she ever attempted to impress, she fell out of the sky. According to them, it was the season's most exquisite wedding, until the helicopter arrived. When I got to the top of the hill, I was at ease. Below, I could see the arena sprawled out like a live Pinterest board. Rows of well-arranged seats, a white canopy, and a floral arch flowing champagne and delicate pinks. Behind them, the vineyard gleamed in the afternoon sun, becoming golden. Everything seemed flawless. Also, excellent. Claire's gown flowed like a wedding advertisement as she stood close to the altar. Anthony, her fiancé, was grinning next to her. A string quartet performed a pleasant, upscale-sounding tune while guests drank roses and posed for pictures. Then the noise. There was a buzz at first. Delicate. Wondering. All heads were turned to the sky by the time the helicopter was almost above. The string accompaniment ceased. The atmosphere changed. What's happening? Someone yelled. Then the fall. Like snowflakes, hundreds of white cards fell from the sky. Before they flipped them over, visitors first reached out, perplexed, believing it was a wedding-related activity. A black and white picture of my wife, Emily, on one side. Elegant, powerful, sincered opposite, the reality. Claire's message in a screenshot. If he brings that wife who looks like a librarian, I'm gonna crop her out of every picture. My mother's heart-shaped group chat response to Claire's comment. UG. After she ruins the aesthetic, Claire sends him her most audacious text to coerce him into paying half of the wedding's cost. He folds every time. The stunned guests' shoulders, the tables, and the floor were all struck by the cards. Phones emerged. Some people gasped, and others started whispering. Some merely stood motionless, gazing at their objects. Claire was the first to scream. Unsure whether to run or protect her, Anthony glanced around. Then mayhem. In a desperate attempt to seize the cards before more people read them, my mother sprang for them. My father yelled that he was going to call security. Thinking it was a drone prank, The photographer freaked out, and Claire, the ideal bride, started to spin around and yell, "Who did this?" Then she noticed me. I was observing from just outside the venue gate. She came charging at me. Veil crunched under her high-end heels while her makeup twisted and cards cracked. "What's wrong with you?" "Everything was damaged by you." I didn't recoil. "No," I responded coolly. "I told everything." She ceased to shake. "Indeed. Now we're retreating. I don't know if the show still featured this." Claire's expression contorted. "I was always hated by you. You felt envious. It is what it is." I moved forward a step. "Feeling envious? You weren't invited." According to my wife, she didn't fit the desired appearance. "I would finance your dream," I told everyone, "because I always do." This wasn't revenge, Claire. This was a wake-up call. Just then, Anthony appeared behind her, staring at one of the cards. He looked at me, then at her. "You said you didn't talk about him like this." She tried to grab his hand. "It's taken out of context." He pulled away. "No, it's not." And then he walked off, left her standing there in a $9,000 dress, alone. My mother ran up next, red-faced and wild. "What have you done? If you humiliated your sister in front of everyone, her wedding is ruined." I stared at her. "You helped her humiliate my wife for months and expected me to fund it." "You're exaggerating," she inquired. I pulled one of the cards from my pocket and held it out. "Is this dramatic? You like this, remember?" Her face went pale. Guests were now openly leaving. Someone muttered, "This is a disaster." Another said, "Good for him." One woman took a photo of Claire crying and whispered, "That's going viral." I turned and walked away. I didn't say goodbye, didn't look back. And in that moment, with truth raining from the sky, and every lie laid bare, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I dropped the truth on them from the sky. But what hit hardest was the silence that followed. For the first time in my life, no one from my family called me. Not that day, not the next. Not the one after that. Quiet. Not even a text to scream or threaten or accuse. At first it unnerved me. Then it made me smile. Claire went dark on social media. Her Instagram scrubbed clean. The wedding hashtag she promoted for months. However, no posts, no reels, just uncomfortable images from guests showing a crowded location, a bride in full breakdown, and cards scattered like confetti. The internet, of course, has opinions. I didn't share the video, someone else did. And once it hit a wedding drama forum, it erupted. Bride bans. Still deems her unattractive. Gets exposed mid-wedding via helicopter, drop 500K likes. Claire's name wasn't labeled, but those who knew. The comments were nasty yet honest. Imagine calling someone not aesthetic while asking them for money. "I hope you dropped a Venmo request to Emily." Saw the post 2 days later. She came into the room, phone in hand, trembling. "Was this you?" I met her gaze. "Indeed." She said nothing for a long time. Then she sat down next to me, carefully placed the phone on the table, and muttered, "Thank you." Then she started crying. This time, it's release, not anguish. We opened a bottle of wine that evening. The excellent one laughed till 2 in the morning while sitting on the floor like adolescents. They were no longer with us. Of everything. But there will always be opposition to freedom. The calls eventually arrived on day 4. My mother comes first. "You have no right to humiliate your sister in that way. She is inconsolable." I maintained my composure. "For years, you all embarrassed my wife. She just gave Claire a taste of what she has been offering." She said, "You're being dramatic. It was only a miscommunication." "No," I concluded by stating that it was a trend. Click. My father then made an attempt. He sounded worn out. "Good morning. Your point has been made. It's enough." "Not exactly," I answered. "I have yet to provide the further screenshots." After muttering a curse, he said, "So, that's all. You're finished with us?" I chuckled quietly. "I'm finished." It wasn't until the money stopped that you realized. 2 days later, Claire sent an SMS, just one line. "Everything is damaged by you." I didn't respond. Rather, the first used a laughing emoji to convey her text to Emily. "You destroyed her branding," Emily retorted. "The most peculiar aspect?" Anthony made contact. "Indeed. The bridegroom, as it happens." 3 days after the wedding, he moved out. He sent me a LinkedIn message. Of all locations. Half of what she said behind my back was unknown to me. I appreciate you showing me who I nearly wed. We had coffee together. He appeared lighter. I'm relieved. I was fortunate, he remarked. I didn't have to take the hit since you did. I removed the family group chat personally. Blocked all numbers, with the exception of my grandmother's. After watching the video online, she gave me a call. She was unable to breathe due to the intensity of her laughter. That girl needs a lesson in humility, I always claimed. Have I gone too far? I inquired. She hesitated. You got high. They became low. You simply soared over everything. I have lost my anger. Not even resentful, I just finished. Done being the scapegoat and the pocketbook. The brother who never counted but always paid. Emily and I are now organizing a trip. An actual one, not a phony wedding. Honeymoon. A 2-week getaway on a peaceful beach. Not a drama. No Claire, no aesthetic requirements, just tranquility. And perhaps I'll grin when we pass a vineyard. Because I left my history behind someplace down there. And above everything, we took off. I ruined the family, they said. In actuality, though, I just ceased funding the delusion. 3 months have gone by. It's been 3 months since I revealed the truth to them. It's been 3 months since I left a family who thought of me as a legless wallet. I also don't regret anything. Not one. No more last-minute crises. Not anymore. Could you please just talk about this one thing? Not anymore? The only person we can rely on is you. Just tranquility. Very hefty. Restoring. Quiet. I started a new life with Emily. On Sundays, we sleep in. Together, we prepare meals. We chuckle once again. Have a good chuckle. Additionally, we argue over movies or dishes. It has nothing to do with protecting one another from my family's knives. It was worth everything just for that. I should have known, though, that it wouldn't stop there. It was a private number on a Tuesday. I nearly let it ring. Nearly. But I had to respond for some reason. Hi there, Claire was the one. She spoke softly and shakily. Not the same. Before I could even catch my breath, she announced that I was pregnant. Quiet. I'm not sure what to do because I'm pregnant, she repeated herself. As if that had some significance. I remained silent. Anthony went out. I was dropped by my buddies. Parents. They're not assisting. I remained silent. The only person who has ever truly supported me is you. There. No confession was made. Vulnerability encased in manipulation. She stopped, perhaps anticipating that I would reply, okay, I'll help, like I used to do. Let's make this right. Rather, I inquired, why do you tell me this? One more pause. This time, longer. Since I considered the possibility, we might be able to start afresh. Now she was weeping. We are making an effort. Isn't family supposed to support one another? At the time, I sensed it. The pull of old. That silent shame. That pain that tells you that it's your responsibility to save everyone. However, it went by. You're going to be a mother, Claire, I remarked after taking a deep breath. So allow me to present you with something of value. She gave a whiff. All right. Don't treat your kids the way our parents treated us. Don't educate them that debt is a prerequisite for love. Don't instill in them the idea that assistance is something you expect rather than something you value. Additionally, never ever use them to entice someone back into your sphere of influence. She fell silent. I apologize, she muttered. Perhaps she meant it this time. Perhaps she didn't. I didn't have to find out, though. Look for yourself, I said. I then hung up. No drama, no anger, just tranquility. The kind that signals the end of a chapter. That evening, I told Emily. After listening and remaining silent for a while, she inquired, do you feel bad? I considered it. No, I said. I feel liberated. I used to think that remaining meant being the greater person, assisting, allowing forgiveness, sacrificing. However, I now understand that sometimes being the larger person entails leaving and closing the door. Because just because someone shares your blood doesn't mean they should have access to your heart. Would I want a different situation? Yes. Not enough, though, to return. Not enough to exchange their pandemonium for my tranquility. When someone eventually spotted the fire, it was insufficient to re-enter a blazing house. What I now know is as follows. Without respect, love is nothing more than manipulation. Without limits, a family is nothing more than emotional debt. And quiet. The loudest manifestation of truth might sometimes be silence. In this tale, I am not the antagonist. Neither am I the victim. I'm the only one who said enough at last. If you're reading this and wondering if it's acceptable to no longer be the family's savior, then this is for you, indeed. You are not selfish for prioritizing serenity above duty, if you were wondering. Furthermore, you won't just endure the consequences if you're worried about it. You'll soar, like I did, over everything they constructed on my back, even the vineyard and the noise, and the land will never be the same for you. Story 3. I discovered that my card had been debited for every present after our Christmas meal, so we cast our votes. You should cover the costs of others who have children since you don't. Shaking. You'll love what comes next, I told him, reaching for my phone. He chuckled. My phone burst with 53 missed calls the next day. The cousins were yelling. Dad and Mom were pleading with me to stop. Then You must be joking, I responded. My fork-wielding hand froze in midair. I simply looked beneath the table at my phone. I initially believed it to be a malfunction. My credit card was charged $3,642 that morning. Then I noticed the breakdown. Presents from department stores, toy chains, and internet gift shops. Each and every one of them. This was done by whom? I inquired in a low voice, breaking through the background sounds of the speaker's half-hearted Christmas songs and crinkling wrapping paper. I questioned whether the turkey was dry, and Dad looked up too carelessly from his wine glass. He put on a straight face and stated, "We voted. You should cover the costs of others who have children since you don't." I blinked. Well, it made sense. He continued as though he were describing weather patterns. You have no children. The others are still. We thus believed it was only right. This year, you take care of the children's presents. My gaze shifted from him to my mother, who glanced down at her plate. As her twins broke into Lego boxes, my sister continued to drink wine. Apparently, I covered my cousin's expenses. Jeff shrugged sheepishly, as if he realized it was bad but wasn't prepared to defend myself. I responded, "You used my card without asking. You just decided that since I'm single, I'll cover everything," Mom said. "You always claim you don't mind helping. Assisting?" I helped his giving by repeating, almost laughing. This was strategizing in the back room. Dad shrugged and added, "Don't get so upset. It's only financial. You have a lot." My heart was beating so rapidly that I could hardly hear what was being spoken above my ear's pulse. I looked around the table and saw that half of the 12 individuals had not talked to me in a year, unless they were requesting a loan or a favor. They now subtly concurred that I should pay for their vacation as a sort of compensation for not having children. "You're incredible," I murmured, getting to my feet. "Please sit down," my cousin yelled. "Don't spoil the atmosphere. The children are enjoying themselves." "Oh, don't worry," I answered, taking my phone out of my pocket. "I won't spoil the atmosphere. The program will now come to an end." "What is the intended meaning of that?" Dad inquired, chuckling. I looked him in the eyes. "It indicates that you will adore the next step." In fact, he laughed. As if I were bluffing, they laughed. As if I lacked the courage to accomplish what I ought to have done years ago. The following day, my phone blew up, so he didn't laugh. 53 missed calls and yelling cousins. Mom is pleading. Dad is really pleading with me to quit. However, I had already sent it by that point, so there was no going back. It doesn't dawn on you one day that your family views you as a financial asset. No, it was gradual, like a leak beneath the floorboards, quietly. Only until everything collapses do you realize the rot. Years ago it began. I acquired an IT job after graduation. Nothing crazy, just a salary that didn't bounce, health insurance, and consistent job. At the age of 23, my sister became pregnant and returned home. After dropping out of graduate school, my cousin Jason spent 7 years straight trying to figure things out. According to my parents, it was simply a difficult time for me and everyone. It was me who was in control. They said that all the time. "You're doing well. Not much is required of you." With a kind, condescending smile, my mother used to remind me, "You should share your good fortune." Maya once stated so as she accepted a payment for her son's rent from me. Initially, the children's school materials were tiny, gas money for an interview for a job. I never committed to a collective birthday present, but I'm stepping in. After a while, though, it became steady. I covered my brother Dan's rent for 6 months after he lost his job. Sarah, my cousin, wanted to start a little company. I purchased her entire first batch of merchandise and paid her Shopify costs. She never brought it up again after selling 2 things. Guess who paid for Uncle Greg's medical emergency when he was uninsured? Yes. I didn't voice any complaints. Not initially. Families do this, I kept telling myself. Here's the problem, though. You don't get the knife from your family. I also appreciate the bleeding. I allowed them to bleed me dry. The worst aspect. They pretended to be helping me out. Seeing your names on the group card makes you feel good. That is unique. Try not to be so rigid. We are related. Nobody ever expressed gratitude, not once. Money wasn't the only factor. It was attention, time, and energy. Emotional capacity. The default babysitter was me. The contact for emergencies. But someone needs to help. Guy. When I had the flu on Christmas Eve, I texted my mom to say I couldn't make it. She replied, "Okay, but can you still send the gifts? The kids are counting on you." I remember sitting on my bathroom floor wrapped in a blanket, dizzy with fever and thinking, why do they only remember I exist when there's a bill attached to me? But the moment it truly clicked, the moment that started the chain reaction, 3 months before that Christmas dinner, I had taken my niece to a bookstore and let her pick out whatever she wanted. $150 later. She had art supplies, hardcovers, and a giant stuffed sloth she named Lumpy. She was thrilled. I was happy too until I dropped her off. "Where's Swampy from?" my sister asked. I grinned. "I let her pick it out today." My sister frowned. "You're spoiling her. You think you're the fun uncle just because you have money?" I blinked. "What? Honestly?" she scoffed. "Maybe spend less on toys and more on a personality." It hit me so hard I almost laughed. I just spent my weekend with her kid. Time I could have spent relaxing, dating, living. And instead of thanks, I got mocked. Like being helpful made me pitiful. That was when the mask slipped. Not hers. Mine. I saw them for what they were. Takers dressed like loved ones. Experts in guilt. They never respected me. They hardly liked me. I wasn't family. I was a financing source. And then came December. Midway through November, the family group chat began to discuss Christmas plans. Naturally. I was supposed to host once more for all of the children. Once more, act like Santa with a credit limit. This time I was prepared to say no. I promise I was. But then I got a personal text from my dad. "You're quite skilled at this. Why don't you simply handle every present once more? Later, we'll calm down." Last year and the year before, I never settled down. So I answered, cold and brief. "Only if we both agree beforehand. Who is footing the bill?" He didn't respond for 3 weeks after leaving me on read. Perhaps they had received the message, I reasoned. They used my backup card instead. Thus I was mistaken. Years ago, I gave my mother this card as a precaution. The number was still with her. The statement revealed purchases from 5 separate businesses, none of which were in her neighborhood, suggesting that she had shared it, not because of guilt. I wasn't quite there yet, but I wasn't past that phase either. They chuckled when I mentioned it during supper. They chuckled. Dad's exact words. We cast our votes. "You should cover the costs of others who have children since you don't." As if it were fair. Democracy was like this. As if I had no authority to refuse. It dawned on me then that they did believe it. They believed that I was here to lighten their load. I owed taxes to those who had actual families since I was childless. That, in contrast to theirs, my life, my tranquility, my time, and my money were all optional. And they didn't flinch when I got up and told them they would appreciate what followed next. They thought I was bluffing, so Dad chuckled. It has always been. That night, I hardly slept at all. Not because of guilt. I wasn't quite there yet, but I wasn't past that phase either. I was completely awake, reciting every insult and unstated expectation while lying in bed. They always made me feel inferior since I didn't have what they had. Children are dead. Anarchy. That somehow elevated them above me and made us honorable. Throw away. However, I sensed a change when the sun rose and turned my ceiling a light orange. I felt the hesitancy drain like poison. And it wasn't only rage that took its place. Clarity was the key. They desired to handle this as though it were a democracy. All right, let's discuss democracy. I entered the subject line after opening my laptop. Holiday contributions alter the body with instant effect. I'm leaving behind all financial assistance for our extended family. Christmas presents, adult or child birthday presents, school fees, donations, mortgage bridging, emergency Venmo bailouts for unforeseen veterinary expenditures, auto repairs, or Disney Plus memberships are all examples of this. You should anticipate a chargeback if you have already made purchases with my cards. Expect legal action if you have saved or shared my information without my permission. You cast your ballot. I'm returning the vote. To the childless one, Happy Christmas. The first then sent the message to every single person in the group chat. My sister, my parents, every one of the 6 cousins. For that one occasion, my aunt still believes I owe her. When I was 4, she took care of me. I turned off my phone after that. They broke up after precisely 7 hours and 16 minutes. My phone burst in my hand like a grenade when I turned it back on. 53 calls were not returned. Voicemails and dozens of SMS from grieving family members. My cousins are threatening to take me to court for mental distress. It's really distressing that my mother sent me a message that began, "I'm heartbroken," and ended, "This." They phoned me 12 times, Dad. There was only one phrase in his most recent voicemail, "For heaven's sake, please don't do this." However, it was already finished. Because I had already contacted my bank by the time they understood what I meant by chargeback. Unauthorized expenditure had been identified, the fraud claim had been accepted, and over $3,600 had been spent. The icing on the cake was the return of the Christmas iPads and Xboxes, along with the Barbie dream houses and Nerf sniper rifles. The emergency card was frozen by me. Thus, it was twice denied when my cousin Sarah attempted to use it to make a hotel reservation later that evening. There was nuclear fallout. My uncle called me the following day. He is one of the few people who has never asked for money, but he also remained silent when the others did. He spoke in a low, embarrassed voice. "Your mother is crying. You ruined Christmas," she says. I didn't recoil. "No," I replied. "When they turned it into a transaction, they ruined it. They simply couldn't handle it." "No," I interrupted. "They had rights. There is a distinction." Then he was silent. "Are you actually billing them all again?" "I did it already." He let out a sigh. I can't say, however, that they didn't anticipate it. He hung up after that. For days, that was the last polite message I received. 3 days later, the actual battle took place. He was waiting on my porch when I got home from work. Mom, Dad, and my sister Rachel, who had her face twisted like she was chewing battery acid and her arms crossed. "Can we have a conversation?" Mom's voice was already trembling as she asked. I pulled the door open. "Express your thoughts. We didn't intend for it to go that way," she said hastily. "What did we just think? That I would stop talking and pay for it once more?" "Sure, rob me blind, but let's do it with eggnog," I'd say with a smile. Dad attempted to intervene. "Let's avoid making this into a war, son. We are related." I let out a loud laugh. "The moment you took my card without asking and called it voting, you declared war." Family didn't feel like that. It felt like betrayal. Rachel rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, are you still on about that? You're acting like we drained your entire savings. I paid for your car last summer," I shouted, "because you couldn't commute with a cracked windshield. You said you'd pay me back," she snorted. "You make 6 figures. You'll survive. And that right there," I said, stepping closer, "is why this ends now. You all treat me like I'm just a wallet that occasionally shows up with a casserole." My mom's eyes filled with tears. "We were just trying to give the kids a good Christmas. So steal from me that step forward. Enough. This has gone too far. You need to solve this. Undo the chargebacks immediately now." I glanced at him and said nothing. So he attempted a fresh perspective. "Think about how this appears," he continued bitterly. "What do you want others to say? That you betrayed your family over a few toys?" I didn't even blink. "No," I answered. "I want people to say that I finally grew a spine." And then I spoke the one words that made my mom gasp. Rachel scream. And my dad get absolutely white in the face. "I'm done with all of you. I've already banned your numbers. And as of this weekend, I'm relocating to another state alone." The stillness was beautiful. My front door was open. "Now leave my porch." Following the confrontation, there was no sound for the first 48 hours. In all honesty, it was stunning. No guilt bombs posing as family check-ins, no passive-aggressive messages, no phone calls. I could breathe for the first time in years. As I sat on my floor with a Spotify music and a cup of coffee, I became aware that I wasn't burdening anybody else. Nobody was counting on me to save the day, pay a payment, or repair a catastrophe. Peace prevailed. However, I was familiar with my family. When they lose their preferred donor, they don't just let go. They began to crawl back in the only language they understood by the third day: manipulation. Perhaps we ought to speak like grown-ups. Your mother has been suffering from stress. Are you content now? The children want to know why Uncle Ghost no longer calls. I noticed the messages. Since I knew none of them missed me, I didn't respond. They didn't get what I gave them. Then something unexpected happened. My cousin Jason sent me a note. I made a mistake. Can we have a conversation? I didn't respond. He appeared different when he was at my front door an hour later. Not the typical sarcastic hoodie-wearing, half-drunk version of him. He had a jacket, a watch, and his hair combed. He appeared to be acting like a competent brother. I signed up for online classes, he remarked. Promotion. I've been working with a pal in an attempt to get my act together. I said nothing. I felt envious of you. After a lengthy silence, he said, That's the reason I snapped. You're L. I was grinning. I was by myself. That wasn't punishment, though. For the first time, it was liberty. Once you cut away the individuals who never listen to you, it's strange how quiet your world becomes. I banned them all after changing my phone and moving states. There was no loneliness in the stillness. Peace prevailed. Go for it. Glory, full-bodied peace. No more guess who texts. Jason. He was still the same. He was playing a part. He didn't come to say sorry. He came to check on my belief. There are tears. I froze the backup card, locked down all the passwords, and notified my bank once again. My family never again came close to me after that. Then freedom arrived. I took a job in another state and terminated my lease. More income, a new apartment, and the absence of family within 400 miles. However, neither the work nor the new beginning was the greatest part. Jason's wife, Kelly, had left a message. I witnessed his actions. I'm going to file for divorce. And I'm grateful. The only person who ever truly helped was you. I wasn't prepared for how hard that affected me. She was aware of what was going on the entire time, but she hasn't said anything yet. Then it dawned on me that perhaps my choice wasn't only about me. Perhaps my self-discovery inspired others to follow suit. I wrote a final message in the family group chat before I left town. I gave it a new name. This bank is shut down for good. Instead, try loving. I then clicked leave chat. Music was blaring through the windows as I drove off, the car crammed full of boxes. I grinned. I was by myself. That wasn't punishment, though. For the first time, it was liberty. Once you cut away the individuals who never listen to you, it's strange how quiet your world becomes. I banned them all after changing my phone and moving states. There was no loneliness in the stillness. Peace prevailed. Go for it. Glory, full-bodied peace. Please stop sending texts asking if you could just pay the rent for this month. No more phony worries wrapped in guilt trips. No more seeing names that only showed up on their invoices flash up on my phone. They had vanished. Not simply gone either. For the first time in my adult life, I was cut off. I had no stake in anybody else's survival financially. I was also surviving on my own terms for the first time in my adult life. I discovered a new flat. It was my nothing special, my guidelines, my spending plan. Only items I loved were in my refrigerator. I left my phone on to do not disturb the first night I stayed there. I finally realized there wouldn't be a call, not because I was expecting one. And believe me when I say that there is a certain healing that takes place when you don't have to defend your limits, justify yourself, or question whether you're being too harsh all the time. You're not being cruel, I assure you. You're exercising your freedom. Of course they tried. Voicemails from blacklisted contacts, new phone numbers, and even a burner Instagram account that messaged me. Return home. We are related. I chuckled. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. When you laughed in my face and voted to take from me, I stated that. When my own father advised me to achieve more because I was childless, I responded with that. That's what I stated when my brother attempted to hack my bank account despite everything. It's different now, though. Enough is no longer a request. It's a line. And you know what? They will never cross it again. I told my therapist everything when I first started treatment. She didn't flinch, simply stated and nodded. You were raised to think that sacrifice is necessary to win love, because that's what it was. That statement stayed with me. They gave me the impression that I had no value until I contributed. Unless I made a payment, I did not belong to the group. unless I make a sacrifice, peace, time, and money. They would not even act as though they loved me. Family members shouldn't behave like that. It wasn't care, it was control. And I got away with it. Nowadays, people ask me if I regret cutting them off. Not for a moment, please. I wish I had done it sooner. Every birthday celebration I sponsored that I wasn't even invited to, I regret. Every time I have to postpone a trip across town because someone's power bill is past due, I regret it. I hate being the one who kept track of each cousin's child's birthday while they consistently neglected mine. I regret allowing them to deceive me into believing that I was the one who was selfish. I no longer even cringe when I think of them. When they determined that I was helpful rather than locked, they made their decision. Now that they voted, I did, too. Unanimous ended. However, this is the unexpected turn of events. Compared to when I was their financial and emotional prisoner, I'm doing better now. I received a promotion. I set off on a journey. The only things that the person I'm dating asks for are honesty and presence. I'm taking up hobbies again. Years ago, I gave up trying to get acceptance. I became interested in photography. Instead than just ordering takeout, I'm learning how to prepare genuine meals, paying someone else's rent while eating at my desk at midnight. I got a dog through adoption. I gave her the name Balance. She is dependable, calm, and only wants love from me. This, to be honest, is more than I can say for the majority of my biological family. And I received an SMS from an unknown number right as I believed the narrative was finished. It simply stated, "He's out. We are divorcing each other." I wanted to let you know that it was Jason's ex-wife, Kelly. At last, she walked away from him. My brother's small change seemed to have a time limit. Later on, she informed me that he went into a downward spiral, lost his job, got intoxicated, and spent all of his remaining funds. She discovered that after being arrested, he was still attempting to use my old bank information. She remarked that you were the only one who ever saw it clearly. Before, I didn't believe you. Now I do. It truly hit me at that point. Cutting them off wasn't the only thing at stake. It has to do with not carrying their illusion any longer. You don't always rescue yourself when you walk away. For someone else to see the truth at last, you shine a light. I did not lost any relatives. I got myself out of a fraud. I thus grin and respond, I used to be the one who paid for Christmas. When people inquire about the whereabouts of your family, I am the one who has now rescued myself from it. That independence is something I wouldn't exchange for anything.